welcome to Comic Books and You. Today we are actually going to finish Peacemaker Tries Hard, as this is the 6th issue in a 6-issue miniseries. This has been a pretty long run, honestly. It's probably it would be the 2nd series I've completed since we did Grifter and She, which was a 2-part series at some point. But out of that, this is the first series we've really completely reviewed here on the channel. And I'm happy that we went through it, as this was probably the best book from DC this year. Up until now, at least. There might be some good ones in the coming 3 months. Who knows? But this was an experience that I recommend a lot of people go through, as this was a great book. And we're going to finish going through it now. So, Christopher Smith, the Peacemaker, has been a massive learning experience for him throughout this adventure of team-ups with monkeys, with old men, with weird people in general. He basically went from someone with absolutely no purpose to someone who learned about betrayal, the value of sacrifice, and what it actually means to be a hero. This is a big advancement for the character overall. And yes, really at the end of this, Peacemaker is really a hero and is recognized as such by pretty much everybody that he had the luck or bad luck to cross path with during this adventure. We also learned a lot about the Red Bee, and we've learned a bit more in this particular issue. We basically learn why he keeps a very positive outlook on life, enjoying it as much as he can, and seeing beauty in everything that he can in honor of all the people who died in World War II, and especially his own squadron, who was killed by the War Wheel. The Red Bee is really a man who knows this value of sacrifice, just like the bee his namesake is taken from. We're going to quickly go through the cover before we go through the story here. I've had to modify my format just a little bit because there's a few things I want to talk in this particular review that's going to be a little bit different than usual. Here, we've got a fairly straightforward cover. I'm not a huge fan of the overly orange palette that is being used. It's been used throughout this entire series, I know. But here, it doesn't attract the eye quite as well as I would want it to. And it's not the best at taking the characters out or popping the characters out here on this page. I do like Peacemaker holding Bruce Wayne up like a trophy because it works really well here in the whole element that this is basically the entire story of what we're going through. And I'm really not sure which of the covers we've seen they will be using for the trade paperback. There was quite a few of them that were competent or very good overall. So in the end, when the TPB comes out, I'll see which cover they finally decided to go with. Pretty sure it won't be one of the variant covers. It'll probably be one of the standard covers. But at this point, I really do not know. As we remember, Brain was inserted into Chemo's body after a fight with Red Bee turned quite catastrophic for him. And unfortunately, having one of the world's most evil creature mixed with one of the world's most intelligent supervillain is probably not a very good thing. The whole building is crumbling, and Chemo is starting to try to fight our heroes. Peacemaker decide to, even if they're going to die or they're going to have a very hard time there, at least get his hand on Mala. More importantly, because he betrayed his trust by pretending to be his friend. The fight doesn't go too well for a Peacemaker, as Mala is a little bit bigger than him. But he uses his laser helmet and zaps the giant gorilla, turning it into, as they say there, burnt air smell. Chemo / the Brain is not too happy about that, and he starts attacking our hero. After rescuing Mala, Peacemaker counters with more laser, which only angers the Brain, and he starts going on a diatribe on how Peacemaker should be dead, and that he will destroy everything that Peacemaker holds dear. We also have here the Brain clones and teenage Deathstroke escaping in little inflatable rafts. Fun little aside there. The situation is quite dire, but Richard and Christopher decide to get into the War Wheel and charge towards the mad man turned into a giant monster. And Peacemaker at that point kind of realizes that this is probably a suicide run. As this is going on, the Red Bee explains to Peacemaker why he keeps an extremely positive outlook on life at all time. He owes it to all the soldiers who died in World War II, especially his own squadron of soldier, which cannot live another beautiful day or even a bad day. So he needs to live his life as best he can and looking at things in a good way, in their honor. As this discussion is going on, Richard is basically tricking Peacemaker to get to the escape hatch on the side of the war wheel, and he kicks him out so that Peacemaker and Bruce Wayne, the dog, not the human, can survive this ordeal. Richard wishes Peacemaker a happy birthday, which is the reason why Peacemaker has been trying to get people to come to a party over the weekend throughout this entire story. And he quickly rams Chemo with the war wheel, which destroys both the war wheel and Chemo / the brain at the same time. This is one of the rare cases where I would say the orange palette for action scenes look really good in this particular comic. It's rather poignant right there. 2 days later, Christopher is mourning his friend and his bail officer at the same time with the bees and offers a beer to them, as apparently bees like beer for some reason. Well, probably because of the sugar content in it, so they can try to turn it into something else. And he says that they shouldn't be sad in his honor, but they probably will be sad for an extended period of time. He also mourns the fact that Red Bee was probably the best father he had, even though they were only around each other for a few days. This nice little panel here. We then go to Peacemaker's birthday party, where we start meeting all of the characters, or a majority of the characters we saw throughout this story. So we've got the people he met at the bar where he was gravely wounded. Desmond is still alive. And we have that really cool speech bubble with a lot of bandages around it. That's actually really imaginative. We've got the sanitation worker who was almost killed by Peacemaker. We've got the store owner where he went to buy the protein powder and the cake mix. We've got his neighbor who's still mad that Mala destroyed one of his tree. And Peacemaker is happy for everyone and making burgers for everyone. We get to see the Suicide Squad with Captain Boomerang. I think that's Deadshot, Harley Quinn, and King Shark. Along with Miss Davis. Wait, no, it's not Viola Davis. That's Amanda Waller, even though it's pretty clear where the inspiration's coming from. We also have Johnny Blackbird and Georgia, the bartender, waitress, that said that she didn't want to go and take care of old people over the weekend. And it looks like she was quite happy to go to that particular party anyways. We have just about everyone we saw in the comic here. Peacemaker gets praised by Amanda Waller, where she says that he's an actual hero, even though he's more of a brute club than a fine scalpel. Peacemaker meets teenage Deathstroke by bringing him some pizza rolls. And he now goes by the name Dancestroke, because why not? Which ties this particular loose end. And in the end, the demolition team decides to go and try to get payback on Peacemaker. But unfortunately for them, he's not alone at the time. So there's quite a few people there to have a friendly chat with them. So about half of this comic is this resolution section, which is really interesting overall. It's interesting to have a good section of what's how this whole story ends. We also have a very nice conclusion to the whole brain story. It doesn't tie in with any of the other comics that we've seen or that I've recently perused with Peacemaker. So that's a thing that we're going to talk about as well. But everything's tied up together really professionally at the end. It doesn't need a sequel, but it could have one if we wanted to have a fun continuation to this story. As far as the book itself goes, it's a black label book, so we have a card stock cover. We've got a decent enough paper quality in it. As I keep saying, this should be our standard quality for every floppy that is sold. And if they can sell it at $4.99 rather than $3.99, oh well. I mean, at this point, you're inflating the price of those books more and more. And the content is not reflected in it, so not a bad thing if they actually give us a tiny bit of quality for the book itself. We get no ads on the cover, all around, back flap, forward flap, and the back cover. It's all dominated by the branding and who's made the book, which is very good. Not something that you'll have on every book. That's a thing that I shouldn't be expecting. But for some books like these, maybe not a bad thing overall. We only get 3 pages of ads in this, and it's for King Kong and Godzilla versus the Justice League. I'm all in for that particular story. I'll buy the different books and try to review it. But I don't see it in my local comic shop order list, so I'll have to go to Capcan Comics once again for it. I'll try to get those that actually have the sound chip in it if they're not sold out already, because that sounds like a really funny little thing for the product. At the end of the book, we get a short story for Wesley Dodd's The Sandman, which is for the new Golden Age imprint publishing initiative, whatever you want to call it, by DC. It's hard to be excited for another publishing initiative when another event and another this and another that. But this one has a little bit of potential to it because they are going with a very retro storytelling style. I might buy a few of the books just to see where it goes, but it's not going to be any of my priorities. I believe that what is most frustrating about this particular book is that it will be forgotten. If we're lucky, Cal Starks will get a second run with Peacemaker sooner than later. But really, in the end, Peacemaker is now the DC character. Basically, he's their Iron Man for some reason. And James Gunn is pushing him forward because his wife is in his show. All the character development we've seen from Chris in this particular book will not be reflected in any other DC properties, which proudly features Peacemaker now. I mean, we'll be lucky if anything in these books are referenced anywhere else, especially since they're Black Label. I really loved this miniseries, but it does feel like it's a bit wasted by DC, unless we're really lucky and Someone Edition finally realize that this is their better book and characterization of the character, and decide to start implementing what we've seen in this book in other books all around the place. Another thing that could happen that I haven't put there, hopefully this book gets adapted by James Gunn for their DCU, whatever they decide to call it this week, because it would actually give John Cena something to do. That would actually be interesting, but I'm not keeping my hopes up. We get very few of these orange action panels in this issue, and this is a thing that I kind of appreciate because this was overused in some of the others, and it kind of feels lazy compared to everything else in this book. Chemo looks great throughout the issue, and you can tell that there's work done every time he's on the page, with the artist actually taking the time to make it look good, so I'm quite happy about it. We get the full page with the War Wheel and Chemo hitting each other. We get no text, no nothing, not even onomatopoeia on there, but it really makes you happy to see that particular conclusion. The Brain will probably survive this. Mala will probably survive this. You know, it's comics, but it does give us a good resolution to the whole series. You could have ended the book really with that shot and it would have worked as well, but then we wouldn't have had the nice resolution with Peacemaker afterwards. So there's advantages and inconvenience to it. The full page we have with the bees mourning the red bee and a defeated Peacemaker walking away is really great. It's even though he had a big victory here, we do see that Christopher Smith is not happy about what happened here. This is one of those rites of passage kind of page here, as we have a hero after a massive victory realizing that he still lost quite a few things, something that the Peacemaker had no place in doing in the past, which is really great. And all the bees surrounding the mask at the bottom there is also really a nice touch, with the bees still looking really great, which is an interesting thing to say, but still a very nice thing to have in a book. It's also nice to see all the normie characters in the story being around, and it gives us a nice dichotomy between heroes and normal people in DC. The normal people, really, they look like normal people. There's nothing special about Desmond or the store clerk or the sanitation worker. They're your average person, especially when you put them next to a monster like Peacemaker. And we still have petty discussions between them as well, which is nice when we were dealing with super villains and super powered creatures just a few pages before. The Suicide Squad is also pretty good in this one. I'm not sure why they decided to go with that setup rather than the setup from the movie. Doesn't really matter. I would have preferred Fat Waller to Viola Davis's Waller, but since the whole inspiration for this comic is from the DCU Peacemaker show and surrounding, it's kind of understandable why they use that one. And that's more or less the setup they've been using for Waller recently. If you look at other comics where she shows up, the Viola Davis influence is a little bit more present than it was before. The final page is great to have as a final shot in this whole story. We get everything that we want from it, including a really derpy dog, an angry John Cena in the middle, and everybody that is relevant around it. It really works to tie everything together in this particular series. After a little bit of consideration, I kind of understood why I really liked this story so much. It's because we actually have a character arc for Christopher Smith, which is a thing that we barely see nowadays in comics. We just don't see it on TV anymore, especially when it's a female character that is the center of attention. Let's say the Ahsoka show that just ended. It's a thing that we have forgotten almost. So we see a small character arc and we're actually impressed by it. This is a story that really starts with Peacemaker just being an idiot freed from obligation since he doesn't have to work with the Suicide Squad and Task Force X anymore, but he's got nothing to really live for. He finds a small thing to keep him going, just a small dog, and that small thing is taken from him. And when he tries to reclaim it, he is betrayed by someone he decided to put his trust in. So he goes to a point where he was at the lowest he ever was. He meets up a father figure that he never had before, and they bond over masculine things like trying to save a dog, trying to fight villains, etc. He learns the value of friendship and sacrifice, and he comes to terms with his place in life and learns to celebrate it. Honestly, this is a complete arc for a character, and it impresses me that someone is still able to write that in the deconstructive age we live in. Matthew Levine really did a good job as an editor on this particular book, keeping everything tight and moving in the right direction to have that strong arc for that character. Or maybe he did a really awful job by not talking to Starks and Pugh and letting them do whatever they want rather than giving them notes over everything. In the end, it's very hard to know if it's one or the other, because we will never be able to tell, and it'll never come up in any interviews. But here it's a thing that we need to think about. One of the main story elements throughout this book has been fighting for what we care about. And here, Peacemaker is fighting for Bruce Wayne. Red Bee is actually fighting for Peacemaker. Brain's fighting for Mala, and Mala's fighting for the Brain. So everything is tied up here with people doing things for other people. And this particular, those exchange are all extremely masculine in the end. It's more masculinity than you would see in almost anything coming out of DC at the moment. Even when you get an actual masculine character trying to do something. We do get the quick callback with the previous issue with Danstroke and the Brain clones fleeing. I'm not sure if Danstroke is going to be featured in anything else in the future, and I'm not sure 50 Brain clones, probably all fairly intelligent themselves, roaming around the DC universe is going to be a super safe thing, even though they seem to be far more gentle and kind than their original. It's just a bit weird here to have this going on, but in the end, who knows if anything will come of it, as I said. We get another great payoff with the Red Bee actually doing a suicide run in the war wheel to save the world. Call back to the same thing that we had in the previous issue with bees being ready to sacrifice everything for the safety of others. It works perfectly well throughout this story. Red Bee's outlook on life is also a beautiful thing to have and something a lot more people should be embracing. When you witness the waste of life that we have not only in our everyday lives, but with everything that's going on around the world, maybe it'd be important that more people just look at things in a positive way and realize that when you snuff out a life, well, these people will not be able to have any more good days, bad days, or just, the day where you wake up in the morning, you go to work and do what you need to do. It's pretty tragic once you think about it in the long run. He also is the first person to really recognize that Peacemaker does his best, is improving, and is trying to learn from everybody else to become a better hero and a better person. The morning scene with Peacemaker and the bees is very poignant as well. He is shown at his most vulnerable, which is not something that we normally see in comics nowadays either. You will have males being vulnerable, but mainly as damsels in distress, as we sometimes say. You'll have men be vulnerable because they are weak, because they are stupid, etc. But you will not have a man being open about his emotions and how life has been throwing curveballs at him, like we see here. This kind of panel, this kind of discussion you sometimes have in manga, especially the slightly more serious ones, or that one serious chapter in a shonen manga. But honestly, it is not a thing that we see in comics nowadays. Is Peacemaker still dumb? Yeah, that's part of his charm. That's part of the character himself. Once again, being dumb doesn't discredit him at all as a hero. Most heroes are dumb if you look at the shonen genre as an example. Easy realizing that he could get better and that he should listen to others. Yes, that's actually how he grew. He managed to build himself a network, and he knows now more than ever how to build such a network to help him move forward, something that he didn't have at first. I am somewhat happy with how this ended, but I'm also sad that it actually ended. This is what you want with a miniseries. You want people to feel exactly like that. Over 6 months, I really grew to love the antics of Peacemaker and the odd team-ups he ended up being in, and the weird people he ended up fighting over time. Starkitz and Pews really slam dunked this series against all odds. I was honestly not expecting it to be that good, knowing what we know about Peacemaker right now. This could have been nothing but a TV show tie-in, but they used everything that they could to make it the best that it could be, and probably something that would be hard to adapt as a TV show in a way. Would have I preferred the Red Bee to survive? Yes. Red Bee, Peacemaker, Dan Stroke would have been a hilarious team to send on mission, learning from each other, etc. Richards was an extremely interesting character, and a character that could have been used in all sorts of ways to move all sorts of characters forward. I will strongly recommend you buy this series. We need to support the books that are actually good out there, especially when they're few and far in between. If you want to wait, get the trade paperback once it's released, or just walk into your local comic shop and see if they have these in the long boxes, the short boxes, or anywhere else. It is really worth the investment of time reading it. It probably won't get a huge resale value. You probably don't need to CGC all of those books, but it is something that is deserving of eyeballs looking at it, honestly. So thank you for going through this entire series with me. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Comment. It always helps, and it always lets me discuss things with you guys. Remember to always keep on reading comics. Keep on loving them. I'll keep analyzing them, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.